We aim to produce an interesting show by giving a platform to many different views and perspectives. That's why the opinions expressed and statements made by our guests are theirs and theirs alone. They do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of our presenters, Due North PR, or the podcast itself. You're listening to True North, a regular roundup of business and community news and developments in Northland. Hello and welcome to True North. Thank you for taking the time to listen. It's Wednesday the 12th of November. I'm Peter Heath. On the show ahead,
it's one of those things that the more you learn about, the more you practice, the more you are connected to that, the less fear there is and the more comfortable you feel. And really that's all we're doing with this topic called death.
I speak with Whangārei business owner Katy Mandeno about Go With Grace, a Northland-based initiative she founded that guides and supports New Zealanders through their experiences with death and dying, a topic that she says Kiwis don't deal with and prepare for anywhere near enough. First though, a look at what's happening in business and community news across our region. Now, we've focused on governance quite a bit in this podcast, particularly on how to boost governance capabilities in Northland, which is why we were pleased last week to see news of a free governance training program aimed at members of trusts, boards and community organisations across the region. Whangārei District Council, in partnership with Kaipara District Council and Far North District Council, has organised a free governance training program to help people build confidence, develop a positive board culture, and enhance their organisation's ability to deliver effective outcomes and long-term sustainability. Participants will be taught how to apply the principles of effective governance to decision-making in their organisations, identify practical strategies to improve board processes and meetings, and explore ways to create and sustain a positive board culture. The two-part workshop will take place online on Monday the 1st of December and a week later on Monday the 8th. It will be hosted by LEAD, the Centre for Not-for-Profit Governance and Leadership. We'll include a link to the registration page on the WDC website in the show notes. Continuing with the education theme, a new partnership between Massey University and Regional Economic Development Agency Northland Inc. aims to strengthen education, research and innovation opportunities across Northland's food and fibre sector. Primary industries such as pastoral farming, horticulture, fishing and aquaculture, and forestry remain the economic backbone of the region, contributing more than $1.4 billion to Northland's GDP each year and accounting for about 68% of the value of Northland's exports. Yet, despite the significance to the region, Northland Inc. maintains that the supporting systems for education, training and research have not always kept pace, leaving untapped potential across the region. The result being that many of Northland's young people leave the region to study, and businesses often need to look elsewhere for research support or technical expertise. The agreement establishes a platform for collaboration between the university, Northland Inc., iwi, local schools and industry. It sets out shared priorities that include supporting secondary schools to deliver quality learning in agriculture, horticulture, food technology and environmental management, developing tertiary training pathways from level 1 to 3 through to advanced qualifications and degrees, growing regional research partnerships, including with the Northland Agricultural Research Farm, the Kaipara Moana Restoration Project, NAFA Innovation and Enterprise Park, and iwi-led initiatives in food and fibre, exploring the development of micro-credentials and short courses that respond directly to local workforce needs, and working towards a physical Massey presence within the planned Whangārei Knowledge Hub, ideally by mid-2026, including the appointment of 2 roles based in Northland. The first of these roles will focus on building local research and student engagement, promoting regional study opportunities and postgraduate training pathways, and connecting students with funding and industry partners. The second role will focus on long-term Māori partnership development. Now, just before we kick into this week's conversation, a quick appeal from me. We're looking for a commercial partner for this podcast, and I'm hoping you might be able to help. It takes a ton of time and effort to keep this baby rolling with a new episode every fortnight. So we'd be delighted if there was anyone out there who might be prepared to join us as a sponsor. We're still very new in podcast terms, but our audience continues to grow. It would be lovely to find a commercial partner to share the ride with us. If that's you, or you think you know of someone we should be approaching, please drop us a line at truenorth@duenorthpr.co.nz. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you. Today, we're going to be talking about a topic that makes a lot of people very uncomfortable. But I make no apology for this because it's a topic that we all absolutely need to be more familiar with and better prepared to deal with. I'm talking, of course, about dying. Because it's such an uncomfortable topic, we tend to avoid the discussion at all costs. But in so doing, we also put off the conversations and planning that could bring comfort and clarity when the time comes. Because, of course, it will come. Grief and farewells are woven into what it means to be human. My guest today is Katy Mandeno, who describes herself as a mother, daughter, sister, auntie, business owner, writer, and someone who has experienced grief. I know her as a skilled marketer, consummate communicator, and a valued colleague working in largely the same space as I do. Kia ora, Katy. It's so good to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Morena, Peter. Lovely to be here.
Katy is the founder of a Northland-based initiative called Go With Grace, designed to guide and support New Zealanders through their experiences with death and dying. Go With Grace provides an absolute wealth of information to help Kiwis better understand and prepare for dying by providing comfort and peace of mind to both themselves and their loved ones. It's also an amazing resource to help guide and prepare those who are left behind, helping them to understand what to expect emotionally, procedurally, financially, socially, and how to deal with it all. In short, Go With Grace is a space for gentle, honest conversations about death, dying, and the love that remains. How was that, Katy? Does that work for you?
That works for me. It's always really hard just to describe myself and with one particular lens at the moment. So yeah, it's
Oh, good on you. Hey, listen, you describe incredibly bravely on the Go With Grace website the grief, trauma, confusion, and emotional cocktail that came with the loss of your infant daughter, and then, in quick succession, your dad and your treasured partner, Chris, who many of us knew, loved, and respected. How did these losses shape your decision to start Go With Grace? You mentioned in your video on the website that you were struck by how little support there existed for those facing bereavement.
I think the three losses that you've just described, they're significant because they were so different. And, I think we often have this perception around dying because we don't like to think about it or talk about it too much that it really, we often picture an elderly person who's reached the end of their natural life and it's a very sort of natural progression and it's very peaceful. We don't very often think about the unexpected deaths. And I think those are the spaces that can prove really, really challenging for people. And, particularly around the loss of my daughter and then Chris, who died by suicide. Because we don't talk about these things as a community, as a society, when you are in that place and trying to understand what is happening through those processes, it's really, really hard, or it was for me anyway, to find the kind of information I needed to help me understand what was happening, to help me know what my choices were. And that was really the driver behind Go With Grace was if I'm just one person. Everybody loses people. There's nothing special about my losses. But what it really made me realize was how little information is out there to support people through these really, really challenging spaces. And that was really the beginning, I guess.
Not just the people left behind, right? The people who are going as well, because they're a really important part of that equation.
Absolutely. And, just There's, for me, I have come to realize that for a lot of people, we've as a society, we've almost disconnected from the dying process. You know, back in the good old days, people would die at homes, they would be cared for by the village, by their family. Because of the way that modern medicine has gone, we've almost found ourselves in this place and space where somebody gets sick and we pass them off to somebody else to care for. You know, somebody is dying, and we see that as a medical issue, when in fact it's not at all. You know, it's a really natural process, and
It's a
about
human issue. Yeah, yeah.
it's an absolutely human issue. And, you know, you will talk to countless palliative care doctors who will tell you that 95% of the care that people need when they are actively dying is not medical. And we've sort of reached the space where we've wrapped all of that, you know, care up at that end of life stage into this sort of medical package. And that's actually not what people need at all. And so there's so much more that we could all be doing if we better understood the process, if we knew how we could help. And I think that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to help people see where and how they can step back into that space and feel really confident and comfortable to do that. Because they have the information to know what that looks like and what's needed, so they can feel helpful, so they can feel, you know, like they actually have a place, they have a role in that at that time.
Yeah. Um, the website points visitors to an immense library, and it's you've just refreshed the website and it's looking great. It points the visitors to an immense library of resources to help those facing death or the grief that comes with loss. It also lists many hundreds of businesses across New Zealand offering products or support in such difficult moments. What was the biggest organizational challenge in building such a comprehensive platform, and how did you overcome that?
So just from my, you know, this started from my experiences, and so I knew there was a degree of information that was missing. But once you start getting into the space and you start looking around and researching, the volume of information, the volume of content just became bigger and bigger and bigger. And when you start to think about all of the, you know, the businesses and the services and the different products that people might want or need or be looking for at this end of life stage, it's immense. And there was nothing else that sort of held together all of those different components of what we were looking for, you know, what people would be looking for at that time. You know, when somebody dies, often you need a funeral director. You may or may not need a funeral home. There's people are putting together slideshows, and so sometimes you need video experts, and sometimes you need florists, and sometimes you need caterers. And you know, where do you go to sort of coordinate the logistics of that? And because we're not all living in the same town or city as our parents and grandparents anymore, often you're trying to make all of those decisions or find all of those services from a completely different part of the country, you know, in a town or city that's completely unfamiliar to you. And so how would you go about that right now? And that's what we were trying to pull together. But honestly, Peter, the volume of information just grew and grew and grew. And we at some point just had to say that's enough. Like
Yeah.
if we have to stop looking, we have to stop researching and writing, and we just have to go live with what we have, and then we can build on it after that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, it's a fabulous resource. And you know, even if people don't need it immediately, I'd certainly recommend that they hunt down the Go with Grace website and just have a look at what we're talking about. It's absolutely brilliant. Um, how do you maintain your own well-being, resilience, and clarity as a leader working in such emotionally challenging territory, Katy? Because this isn't your core business. How do you maintain your equilibrium?
I think one of the things that grief has taught me is that there is no um time is precious, life is precious, and there is no time or energy for me anymore to be anything other than myself all of the time. And so what you know, it's I guess one of the gifts of grief that I talk about is the realizing that I can just turn up as myself. And that's what allowed me to record a video talking about some really, really personal information on the site, because I think it's important for people to know who I am, to know where I've come from, and just, part of that for me is turning up as myself wherever I go. So I have an amazing crew of friends. I have an amazing team of colleagues, and I get to just be myself. So they know all of the highs and all of the lows, and we share that together. And I think that helps me immensely. And I guess, that also creates a space where they get to be themselves and they get to have good days and bad days too, which I think we all need that, right? We all need the space to just be where we're at,
Yeah.
because that's part of being human.
So you mentioned the gifts of grief. Now that's a really interesting and challenging concept. Talk us through that. How does that pan out? How does that play out?
Yeah, I think it is a strange concept, right? Because we associate grief with loss and hardship and trauma and sadness. Um, I think when you go through any really, really significant life experience, people will tell you that there's those moments of clarity that come out of that. Those moments of, if you talk about wanting to find your purpose or wanting to really distill what matters and what doesn't matter, I think that's what grief does. Grief teaches you who your people are, because they are the people who turn up, not just on the day of the funeral, but the people who turn up the next week and the next month and the next month, because the time after the loss is, it's grief is endless. It's an ongoing space that you carry, a space that you live in, and so it teaches you who your tribe are. It teaches you how to let go of all of the nonsense and just focus on what matters. It teaches you to value every day. It teaches you to see every day as a gift, because it's not a given. We all die. I still talk to people who say, if I die, and there's no if. I'm really sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but there's no if. And so, I think just...
They know that, right? They know that. It's just got to be a mindset thing. They just can't get their mind across that. Academically, just logically, they'll know that, but they just
Of
don't
course.
want to address it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because you think about anything else that you don't know about. Public speaking is a great example, right? There's so much fear or concern or attached to public speaking. And again, it's one of those things that the more you learn about, the more you practice, the more you are connected to that, the less fear there is and the more comfortable you feel. And really, that's all we're doing with this topic called death, is that we are creating spaces for people to come and connect with it, to learn about it, to understand what it looks like, what active dying looks like, so that when people are sitting with someone who is actively dying, rather than being fearful about what that experience means, and they actually get to 100% be present in that moment with their person, and just focus on that, not focus
Yeah.
on... Yeah.
No, it's true. Hey, you get to fear something less by learning more about it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we've really got to a place. When I say we, I'm speaking from my own Pākehā perspective. So it's there are so many Indigenous cultures around the world who have an amazing connection and relationship with death, and it's a beautiful thing. And we have so much to learn. When I say we, I mean, Pākehā Westerners. Looking to Indigenous cultures, we're so lucky in Aotearoa to have that perspective and the tikanga of Te Ao Māori, because there is so much to be learnt about how death is just part of life. And it's when you think about the sort of the energy and the planning and the hype that goes into a baby being born, or a wedding, or you think about how much planning we do around our careers.
Yeah.
And death is for me as significant as any of those other life experiences. and yet we don't. Because I think because there is some fear and because there is some unknown, we tend to detach ourselves so much that we don't do any planning. We don't tell people what's important to us. We don't take the burden of the next of the next generation by explaining to them what we want and what we don't want. We don't get our affairs in order. We don't sort our own stuff.
Well,
And
some
that
of us don't. I'll share a story about my mum. She had emphysema and she knew she was going. She had a good long time to prepare for it. And my brother and I were living in the UK and she was in Zimbabwe. We were backwardsing and forwardsing every couple of weeks towards the end. So, we knew what was going on. But when she finally left, she left with a folder on her desk with
perfect.
everything, starting
Yeah.
from right at the front was the image that she wanted used on her order of service.
She's my hero.
Hey,
She's my hero.
everything. She had meticulously planned her own death. Now, she didn't talk to us much about it, apart from the fact that she had this folder and we could expect it.
Yep. Yep.
But it was a solid effort. And
Yeah.
Rob and I were just, wow.
Yeah.
And deeply impressed. So she'd obviously embraced the fact that this was going to happen, and she wanted to go with the same organization that she lived her life.
Yeah.
But that's an exception, right? There's not a lot of that happens.
No, and when you think about how big and complex our lives are now, we're living longer, we're having multiple relationships, and often with different children, and all sorts of complexities, and people have a whole bunch of different kinds of assets these days, and with my dad, he didn't do any planning at all because we had about 3 weeks notice that Dad was dying. And so once we got the news, all of our energy just went into caring for him. And so we started that process after he had died. And I would say it took us as a family about 4 years to unpack, to tidy up, to put away, to sort, um, because he had a big, rich, complex life, and it takes time. I talk about death admin because there is a huge administrative task that goes along with some deaths. Not all deaths, some people's lives are really different, but for Dad it was huge. And I would say to people, if you don't do that work when you are alive, like your mum did, you're handing on that admin, as a burden. I see it as a burden to somebody who's left behind. One of your loved ones then has to go through and do the sorting and do the tidying, and it's exhausting.
On top of the grief that they're
Top of the
already feeling.
grieving.
Yeah.
Your mum, you're very lucky. You're very lucky.
She was great. Hey, listen, as a business owner and a founder, what's been one of your most surprising lessons, or what have been the most surprising lessons you've learned from starting Go With Grace? Something that you didn't expect when you started this as a kind of an offshoot of what you do on the daily?
I mean, so Go With Grace is a completely different. If you think about it from a business perspective, it's a completely different sector to what I had ever worked in before. And I wasn't coming at it from a business perspective. I was coming at it from a very personal, I have identified a need and I want to meet the need. And I think one of the really surprising things for me has been that it's taken a long time. Probably I'm a bit impatient, but it's taken a long time to really build trust, I guess, with some of the other players in this sector. And I think because there hasn't been a Go With Grace before, there hasn't been this entity that is wanting to actively collaborate with other businesses, actively bring people together so that they're in one place to help people who are looking for this information. It's been a really segmented sector up until now, and I think just the idea that we're trying really hard to actually bring everyone together. It's that just the idea of that has been a little bit challenging, I think, for some of the people in the sector, because it's kind of a new thing. They've all had their lane and they've stayed in their lane.
Yeah, yeah.
Quite siloed services, and now here we are, sort of looking to bring them all together. And but what's been really nice in the last couple of years is that there's been a huge shift in that dial, and now there is, we're starting to get into some really fantastic collaborative projects now, which is amazing.
That's great. So
Mm.
True North is aimed at business and community leaders across Northland. What help do you need from these parts of our community to keep doing what it is that you do?
So, the more we dive into the space, the more we realize that the lack of information exists in so many different spaces. And so just one area that we've been focusing on recently is around workplaces' response to grief. And so specifically grief, as in when you have someone in your workplace who is caring for somebody who is dying, perhaps a parent, or they are actively caring for somebody who has, long-term health issues, through to somebody coming back after a loss. And, when you look at New Zealand legislation, it's pretty skint on how, what the rules are around supporting people. So, as an example, if you lose a parent or a partner, you're allowed 3 days bereavement leave. And I can tell you as an example, when Chris died, it probably took me about 4 months to get back on my feet enough to be able to get myself into the office before lunchtime. And so I guess, the what we're actively looking at now is starting to build some programs to support workplaces around, how they can review policies, how they can review their health and wellbeing programs, to really honour and acknowledge grief as part of that. We talk about mental health and we talk about lots of other things, and we often consider the needs of, new mothers as an example. So we often sort of make space for new mums to take maternity leave and then ease their way back into the workforce. But caring for a baby and caring for a partner or a parent at the other end of life is just as hard. So I would love if anyone is interested in this kaupapa, we're looking for businesses to run some of these programs with us as a pilot, as part of our sort of testing and design phase. So if anyone was keen to be involved in that space, I would say get in touch.
Great. Awesome. And I'd echo that. Go with Grace positions itself as providing gentle guidance, support, and peace of mind for people facing death, or for the loved ones left behind. In my introduction, I spoke about how the fear of dying can inhibit meaningful conversations. What strategies have you found most effective in helping people begin to have these hard conversations?
Yeah. So early on, we realized that one of the important things for people was to give them the tools to help them if they were ready to plan. So part of the website is actually a planning tool, which takes people through step by step all of the things that they need to think about as part of the planning of their own death. And the idea of that planning tool is just to help people realize some of the things that they might not have even considered. So, what happens to your Facebook page when you die? Who do you want to have control of that? What's going to happen to some of your really valuable personal items? What will happen to your pets? It's really interesting the things that people are most concerned about, and pets is quite often far up the list. So it's about empowering people to give them a bit of a step-by-step guide to actually start the planning themselves. And what we find is that once we actually get into those conversations, they become, we've run workshops with people, and of course there's lots of tears, but actually it becomes this sort of really proactive, engaged conversation, lots of laughter, lots of memory sharing, and it actually becomes something that people really enjoy doing, planning their own death. Who would have thought? But it's really empowering. I think that's the key, is that it's
Well,
taking this thing.
it's
Yeah.
cathartic, isn't it? It breaks the ice, yeah, and it kind of breaks the taboo. People can
Yep.
actually start talking about it, and when they can start talking about it, they can start dealing with it.
Yep,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
It's about people often talk about the sense of relief they feel just from actually starting the conversation. So I think, yeah, there's huge value in it. I think a lot of it comes down to the level of acceptance people have, and what we often see is that people who are dying have come to terms with the fact that they are dying long before their loved ones have. Um, so it's just creating spaces to start gently talking about some of the things. Sometimes it's just a change of language. So talking about, after I'm gone, then this needs to happen. Can you make sure you look after this when I'm gone? Just some of those little shifts in language can help people start to get their heads around it. There's some amazing books that people could recommend to family members just to get them starting to think about what that might look and feel like. And I guess the other thing to acknowledge is that sometimes it's actually the other way around. Sometimes the people who are dying are really not ready at all to face the fact, and they have very little acceptance, whereas the family around them are much more aware of what's happening. And so it can vary depending on where different people are at.
looking ahead, what is your vision for Go with Grace over the next 3 to 5 years, especially in the Northland region? And how much might local organizations partner with you to realize that vision?
Well, as far as the website itself goes, the amount of content on there is just building and building. So, if any local businesses have any information or resources that they would want to contribute to the site, I would say please get in touch. Like I said, we're looking at developing these workplace programs. So, if anyone's interested in that, we'd love to hear from you. And the other thing I guess that we're trying really hard to do is to take this conversation out into community. When I say community, that could be at a general, a really sort of general community setting like a library, or it could be into retirement villages, or it could be into businesses. So if there are people who are interested in bringing this conversation, to their workplaces, we would love to come and help facilitate and guide that, because it's with the way our population is aging, so 1 in 4 over 65 in 2048. This issue is not going away, and in fact, it's going to become more and more significant, more and more important for us all to be tackling. You couple that with the fact that people are now working into their 70s. This is an issue that workplaces are going to need to get involved with and be
Yeah.
part of the conversation, whether they're quite ready or not. And I would say get ahead of the curve.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, Katie, the subject of death often triggers deep, deep emotional responses, including grief, guilt, regret. Is there anything that you wish more business or community leaders in Northland would understand about death, dying, and grief? And if they embrace that understanding, what difference do you believe it would make in our region?
It really comes down to accepting that death is a part of life. I think we've been on this journey where everything's become very medicalized, and we almost want to outsource it. We almost want to just pass on this responsibility to somebody else. And from my own experience, I can 100% tell you that the more connected and involved you are with the experiences around death, the easier it is to work through your grief, the easier it is to move on. And, so as an example, if you have somebody who has lost a significant person in your workplace, it's not shying away from having those conversations with them. It's not shying away from checking in and seeing how they are. It's giving them the space to feel how they need to feel. And maybe that means some time out from the office. Maybe it means working from home for a while. But that will be a longer term greater gain to both the business and the employee. I think for me, it's just about seeing this as part of our everyday experience. I spent yesterday at a tangi, and it's such an enriching, fulfilling experience if you're open to being a part of it. I think we've got a lot to learn about what death can teach us about life. So I would say, from a business perspective, I think it's just allowing more of the conversations.
I love that line. It's a great line to end on. We've got a lot to learn about what death can teach us about life. Katy Mandeno, you've been brilliant. Thank you so much for coming and talking to us today on topics that I understand could be raw and difficult. You've been great. It's always a pleasure to speak with you, and all the very best for what's coming up for you next.
Thanks, Peter. I really appreciate the opportunity, and it's great to be able to, even if we spark a couple of conversations with this, that's a win for me.
Thanks, Katy. Take care.
Awesome. Thanks, Peter.
And that's all for today's program. Many thanks to Katy Mandeno. True North will return in 2 weeks' time on the 26th of November with the second in our Northern Lights series of interviews with interesting Northlanders and the stories behind how they ended up here. In next week's episode, I'll be speaking with Fiona Bycroft, CEO of Whangārei firm Nort, about the intriguing tale that saw a shy, retiring schoolgirl from down the line become one of Northland's most colourful and extroverted business leaders, and her views about how best to encourage young Northland women into career paths in science, technology, and engineering. I'm Peter Heath. Thank you for listening. True North is an original podcast by Due North PR. To support our work and to stay on top of Northland business news and analysis, access the pod on Spotify, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Please do take that small extra step and subscribe, like, follow, comment, and review, as it helps others find the show. Please also share it with those who may not yet be aware that we exist. As the New Zealand media landscape continues to change, we rely on your support to continue doing what we do. Please let us know what you think about the podcast. Ask questions or make suggestions about topics and people we should feature by emailing us at truenorth@duenorthpr.co.nz. We do read every message.